Okay, today is Tuesday, January 17th, and this is a video on completing the square. We started off the lesson today by talking about the standard form of the equation of a circle. And when we see an equation of a circle in this form, I can very easily tell you what the center is and the radius and then graph it. But sometimes we're given equations, we're told equations are circles, but it's not in this form, so there's no way I can graph it. So my goal is to be able to get it into this form, do some algebraic manipulations to get it in this form to where it's two perfect squares is equal to the radius squared. So we had 4 different steps, so we're going to start with step 1. In step 1, it tells us to group the x's and the y's together on one side, okay, of the equation. If they're already grouped together, then you can go to step 2. If they're over here on the right side of the equation, then I'm going to have to maneuver them and do some subtracting and adding to get them to the left side of the equation, okay? But I can do that if that problem occurs. So when I do this, I can move things, but notice that here the sign moves with 6y because that is negative 6y. So down here it becomes x squared plus 2x plus y squared minus 6y plus 6 is equal to 0. Step 2 tells us to move the constant to the other side of the equation if it's not already there. So in this case, it is not already there, so I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. And I end up with my new equation looking like this right here. So when I get it into this form, then I can go about completing the square, which is what we talked about today in class. So I'm going to rewrite this equation to look how we wrote it in class. So I'm going to write x squared plus 2x plus some number to complete the square, plus y squared minus 6y plus some number to complete the square, to make it a perfect square, is equal to negative 6, and then I have to remember to, if I add a number here, I have to add it to the right side, and I have to add a number again because I added one here in the y values. Okay, we talked a little bit about how we find this missing number. And what we came up with is I take my b value, so I take b, divide that by 2, and then I square it. And that gives me what I need to add to this to make it a perfect square. So my x part of the equation. And I do the same thing with my y part of the equation. Okay? And then I add whatever that is to both sides. But my goal is to look like this. Okay? And we found out, so b divided by 2 here is 2 divided by 1. And what we found, 2 divided by 2. And so what we found is this part right here ends up being b divided by 2. So it's 1. And then 1 squared is 1. And if I add 1 to the left side, I have to add 1 to the right side. Here, b divided by 2 is negative 6 divided by 3, which is negative 2. So that goes there into my perfect square. And then I square it, and it becomes 4 plus 4. And when I plug this into the equation, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't become negative 3. Negative 2 becomes negative 3, and that becomes 9. Pardon me. So in the grand scheme, then this becomes 4. When I have negative 6 plus 1 plus 9, it's equal to 4. And then I have my center is negative 1, positive 3, because it's the opposite. And then r is 2. And then you can graph it. So let's go through and do some different types of equations. I'm going to do them pretty quickly, so pause if you need to. Okay, number 1 looks exactly like the example that we just did. So first thing, I'm going to group them, minus 12x, and then I'm going to add some number to complete the square, plus y squared plus 6y plus some number to complete the square is equal to 19 plus some number again. So here, I know I'm going to end up with x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. So the first thing I do is I take my b and divide it by 2, and it's negative 6. And then negative 6 squared is 36, so I add 36 to both sides. I take my b, I divide it by 2, and that becomes 3, so that's plus 3, and then I add 9. And whenever I do this, it becomes 64. And my radius is 8, and my center is 6, negative 3. So that's that type of equation again. So flipping the page to number 3. This is an interesting one because I have an x squared. I'm going to group them together, the x's together, plus some number to complete the square. But then the y squared is just by itself. It doesn't have any y's, not even any over here that I could move over. So in this case, I already know that my center, the y value for my center, is going to be 0. So in this case, I have x squared plus y squared is equal to, and then I divide it by 2, and then, so that would be negative 1, and then I square it, and I add it to both sides. And so my center ends up being 1, 0, and my radius is 3. Number 5 is a little bit different, but I do it the same exact way. I just have some decimals involved here. So I group my x's. Oops, that's not a plus, it's a minus x, plus some number. And then I add it to my y's, plus some number, is equal to, and then I'm going to move my 0.5 to the other side. So I'm going to add 0.5 to both sides. Okay, and I know that that's going to end up being into the standard form of the circle. So I have an imaginary 1 there, so negative 1/2. That becomes negative 0.5. When I square negative 0.5, it becomes 0.25. So I have to add that to the right side of the equation. And then I come up with the same thing, negative 0.5. And so I'm going to add that squared, 0.25. And when I do that, my right side of the equation is equal to 1. And my center here is 0.5, 0.5. And my radius is 1. Okay, moving on along to the back on page 10, a different type of equation is D, 7D. And here, if you look at it, I have coefficients in front of my x squared and my y squared term. And lucky for us, they are the same. So my first step is, when I'm factoring always, is I'm going to factor out a greatest common factor. So when I do that, it becomes x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 6y is equal to 6. And then to undo multiply by 2, I can divide both sides by 2. And this becomes 3. And then next step is I'm going to group them. X squared minus 4x plus some number plus y squared plus 6y plus some number is equal to 3 plus some number and plus some number. And then I know it's going to be in the standard form. So I'm going to go ahead and write that. Here, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then 3 squared is 9. Okay, so then my equation looks like this. And my center is 2, negative 3, and my radius is 4. So hopefully that helps you along.